conversation.
So I want to pour out so much.
It's probably I'm the 2026 Mid-Missouri Vice President-elect. I'd like to welcome everyone watching the annual Mark Farnan Candidates Forum, both here in person and streaming it live at home this evening. Tonight will be a great opportunity for our community to learn more about those running for Columbia School Board and City Council Wards 1 and 5. Local elections are one of the most important ways we can impact change in our community. With that, I'd like to thank all our candidates for attending this evening's forum. We look forward to hearing your vision for our future. We'd also like to thank our moderator for this evening, Mr. David Lyle. David was the former host of Columbia Morning with David Lyle on KFRU. With over 30 years on air, he used that platform to focus heavily on local and current issues happening in Columbia and Boone County. We want to thank David for continuing to moderate our forum after his time. And now, I would like to turn the event over to David.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be here to do this, and so thank you again, Board of Realtors, for including me in this. And I also like to do it because I thought so much of Mark Farnan and because of what he brought to the community, and his engagement with the community was something that I really admired and appreciate what he did. So I do this in his honor. Well, we're going to start right in with our school board candidates. The election is coming up, and there will be an opportunity to vote for 3 of the 4, and those 3 will serve on the school board at the Columbia Public School District. We'll start tonight, and this will be the same thing when we get to the city council candidates. Each of the candidates that are up here will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and then when we go to question and answers, you can take up to 90 seconds to answer a question. If there's a need to follow up, or if you feel you would like to follow up after everybody else has had a chance to answer, we'll give you another half minute to answer that question, and then when we get to the end, we'll have a minute so that you can offer any closing remarks that you want to. So, I think we'll start at the far end for our opening statements for 2 minutes each. And John Lyman, welcome, and we would like to have you kick us off tonight.
Well, thank you for having us. These are always interesting and good opportunities to kind of get out and meet folks and talk about what's going on. So, my name is John Lyman. I'm a Columbia kid. I was elected to the Columbia Public School Board in April 2023, so this will be kind of my first chance of being on the board and then running for re-election at the same time. We moved to Columbia in 1986 when my dad got a job at the university. This is the only place that I would really ever call home. Went to Grant Elementary School, then we moved to Russell, to West Junior High School. I was at Commissioner's West Junior. And then I graduated from Rockbridge High School in '98. The University of Missouri was the only school I ever considered going to. Graduated with a degree in geography with a minor in history. In the last 20 years, I've been at the Veterans United Home Loans, senior loan officer there. My wife, Molly, has been teaching elementary school and Columbia Public Schools for 20 years. She's also been an athletic coach for high school for Hickman for the last 20 years. She's the stunt coach this year. I like to throw that out there. New all-girls sport. This is year 2 in the state of Missouri. It's cool. The season's coming up. Check a match out. They're interesting. Yeah, we've got 3 kids in the district, a middle schooler, a freshman, and then what will be unbelievable to me until the end, a senior who's actually going to college right now. Really excited to be here, meet some folks, talk to everybody, and yeah. We'll go from there.
Thanks, John. Paul Harper, you're next. You're going to have up to 2 minutes for an introduction.
Great, thank you. My name is Paul Harper. I am the father of 2 daughters, both of whom have now graduated from Rockbridge High School. Education has been a passion for me for a long time. I actually have a master's in special education and taught for several years before going on to law school. Since going to law school, I've worked for the state pretty much the entire time that I've been there, and I currently actually work for DESE, predominantly dealing with HR and dealing with the Office of Childhood. I'm currently the Vice President of the Columbia Board of Education. Like John, I was also elected 3 years ago, and like John, I'm also running for re-election for the first time. Since I've been on the board, I've been the Policy Committee Chair. The Policy Committee has been one of the most active committees we have. We have reviewed or amended over 200 policies since I've been chair, and policies are one of the main ways that the Board of Education impacts the district and tells the district what to do, and we have undertaken a thorough review of all of our policies so that we can do that. And I'm running because I love what I do. I love the Columbia Public Schools, and I'd like to continue the good work that we've done.
Paul Harper, thank you. April Ferrao, your opening statement, please.
So I can echo John and Paul. We are all 3 elected. I call them my boys. In 2023, and we're running for re-election this year to be able to continue this great work. I'm not local. My family moved here in 2000, and currently my husband is a battalion commander in Little Rock, and my 2 children have now graduated Hickman High School and are both in college. I've now spent about 20 years pretty much dedicating everything to Columbia Public Schools. I've kind of been a jack of all trades. I did work in IT at the university. I was a real estate agent for RE/MAX for over a decade. And my first focus was always what can I do to help out with the schools, and then everything else filled in around that. So I can't imagine doing anything other than serving our community through this avenue. In the past 3 years, I've served on the policy committee all 3 years, and Paul and I worked very closely on tracking those and also trying to get the word out that we want feedback from the community. And we've had several policies that, based on community input, we have made changes to or incorporated or brought up for discussion. And then I also serve as the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee, and we'll be working on our next 10-year master plan, which we'll be engaging the community in with soon and deeply, because it will drive our plan. The work is hard. It's incredibly time-consuming. It can be frustrating as all get out, and is incredibly rewarding. And I cannot imagine doing anything different, so I hope I'm able to do that for another 3 years.
April Ferrao, thank you. Our next candidate is Keary Husain. I just want to say water, coffee, and Gatorade. Man, you are having all kinds of possibilities here. That's the most I've ever seen in one of these forums.
I'm trying to set the record for drinks on the dais.
You have said your opening statement, if you would please, sir.
Thank you so much. Greetings, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for letting me join you this evening. My name is Keary Husain. I am a Columbia native. I was born at University Hospital in the summer of 1973. I am a proud product of Columbia Public Schools, attending K through 12, Fairview Elementary. As John mentioned, I was at West Junior High School, and then I graduated from Hickman in 1991. Went off to see the world, went off to college, went off to medical school, ended up back in St. Louis for about 25 years, and ended up moving back here a couple of years ago. My family has been part of Columbia Public Schools since 1958. a gentleman by the name of Don Ferrao brought my grandfather, legendary football coach Dan Devine, here in 1958 with his family to coach the University of Missouri's football team, and we've been part of public schools here ever since. My mom's entire family, I have cousins, my brother and I, and now I have 3 kids in the district. Total of 17 members of my family have been part of Columbia Public Schools over the decades. I brought my 3 kids here because that's why I'm here. My twins, Charlie and Maggie, are at Mill Creek in 4th grade. My son Danny is a freshman at Rockbridge. And for the first time in my adult life, I have time to dedicate to something that I'm so passionate about. I was a professor of surgery and a trauma surgeon at Washington University and Barnes Hospital in St. Louis for over a decade, working 100-hour weeks, and I made a decision to come back to my hometown, be near my family, my kids, and I do have time to dedicate to this, and this is a passion of mine. I was an educator at WashU. I'm on national committees for surgical education, and it just seemed something that I wanted to be a part of. I also want to make it very clear that I'm not running against anyone in this election. I'm running for school board. I belong on this school board, I believe. I could do a lot of great things, but I'll be the first one, maybe it's not greatly political to say this, but I have nothing against the great folks to my right. I just feel like it was time for me to be part of this, and I want to be a part of it, and I think I can really help the city of Columbia and our kids. So I appreciate the time and the opportunity to be here tonight, and I hope that you guys will give me your vote.
I forgot to mention when we got started that we've got a timekeeper up here on the front, and so you'll be holding up 30-second, I think, warnings, and then when it's time to stop. We'll start on our questions. Paul Harper, I want you to answer this first. And I'm going to start with something that was in the Missourian this morning, actually. There was an article in the Missourian talking about in Jefferson City, they're discussing whether to move the school board election to November. And so this is a 2-part question for all of you to answer in your turn. What are your thoughts about if it were a November election rather than an April election? And there was also talk in that article that Jefferson City was, the legislators were considering moving the school board positions from 3 to 4-year terms. So it's kind of a two-pronged question there. Your thoughts about that particular legislation that was mentioned in the Missourian this morning?
Well, I'm pretty neutral when our elections are, but I do think that it's probably important to keep on April, because April are the nonpartisan elections, and really the local elections should be nonpartisan. What I have found both before and after I was on the board is that no matter what side of the spectrum you are, the local issues aren't partisan. The local issues are what is best for our children, what is best for our community, and that is not like the nonsense that we see at the state or the federal level. We all get along. We all agree what a lot of those things are, and these are nonpartisan positions, so I do think they should be on a nonpartisan election date. As far as the time, I actually think 3 years isn't enough, because we're just now getting started after 3 years, and we're just now gaining momentum of what we've been doing. We are trying to transform the district into being better at communication, into ensuring that all of its policies are both employee and student friendly. And we have this momentum building, and then 3 years later we're running again. Some urban school districts actually have a 6-year term. And so, I actually think that the terms being longer would be a good thing, because it would allow people to have more experience and to remain on the school board and do better work in the long term.
I was going to ask this as a follow-up question, but you've already brought it into the conversation, so I'm going to ask you before I go to the next 3 and ask them to answer the same question. Because in that article, we did mention something about the fact that November elections are pretty much identified with a party. If you had to identify with a party to run for school board, would you run for school board?
I've been involved in partisan politics. I don't believe that I would as under the school board, because I truly believe that as a community, I serve the community. I don't serve a party. I don't serve a special interest. I serve the community, and like I said, on the local level, it's not conservative. It's not conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. On any particular issue, people across across the spectrum can be on that issue, and I think it's important the school board stay that way.
Thank you. April Ferrao, so 3 questions here. Would you run if you had to identify with a party? Do you like the idea of expanding the term to 4 years? And what do you think about moving the school board election into November?
90 seconds.
Susan, you got 2 minutes because that's a follow-up, so we give you 2 if you need to.
You don't ever want to give me more than, trust me.
That chair is electrified.
Yes. As far as elections, November or April, I will say I didn't have the opportunity to read the article today because I seem to always have a paywall. But, so I think Paul makes some really good points because our local elections and local things that are on our ballot are typically not partisan issues. Everyone cares about educating our students. As far as what I declare a party, if I had to declare a party if I was running, I'm not really sure because I don't, when I get contacted by families or teachers with an issue or concern, can you help me out? I'm not going, hey, what party are you with? So I can decide whether or not I'm gonna help you. So I don't know that it's even relevant, in my opinion. Yes, I mean, they can ask us to do anything. I don't know. It would be a bridge I'd have to cross if I came to it. The third question was?
Moving to, let's see, you answered about November, 4-year terms.
4-year terms. Oh, absolutely. 100% agree. Prior to us coming on the board, and maybe even some of us were recommended that we should probably not say we plan to do a whole lot of anything our first year. We don't have time to sit around and do nothing for 1 whole year. But there is a significant learning curve, and there's a lot of work to be done. And so you need to be able to jump right in, get on board, learn, spend a lot of time learning all the ins and outs, all the details, how to make decisions, what factors you want to decide in a decision. But a lot of stuff to learn, and like Paul said, you know, we've also had a lot of changes recently, and so there's a lot to work on to get under our feet. I think 4-year terms would be excellent.
Keary Husain, same questions for you, asking about, and there's not a movement to say that you need to put your party, but I appreciate you all playing along with this because I was just curious about it. And the argument to move it to November would be to get a larger turnout for the elections. So I don't think that's a statement on you, although I think it's a statement on us voters, or we voters should come out to vote when it's most important for our local government, be it schools or city council. Having said that, we'll go back to the candidates who are more important, and that would be 4-year term, November election, party affiliation.
Thank you. So I was actually going to say that my only concern about the April election is the turnout. Obviously, especially in the current climate, November elections are widely supported and attended. And I think school board is an incredibly important, local politics, local elections are very important. But I do agree with the other folks about sort of distancing yourself from the fact that this is not a down ticket situation. This is us taking care of the kids and the teachers in the Columbia Public Schools. So I'm kind of torn about that. I do think that if we had them in November, it would be more attended. But again, you pointed it out. It's on the voters. Let's get it out there. Let's really advertise these elections, and let's get people out to vote because they're very important. Having not served on the board, I would defer to the expertise on, and I do. I've been part of committees. I've been part of boards. I've been part of. Right now, I sit on the Mill Creek PTA board, and I was just elected to the newly reestablished City of Columbia PTA Council board. And I think terms are important. I think we need to be able to do the job that we are elected to do. So I think, changing it from 3 to 4 years would be great. Personally, sitting here right now, why not add an extra board member to the board and make it even or an odd 7. Anyway, And as far as partisan, I am politically active. I have my own views. But this is, again, I agree. I don't think something like a public school board or public schools is a partisan issue. I feel strongly about certain things that are happening at a federal level that we need to protect our kids and teach them and educate them appropriately. But I would not condone any sort of partisan acts with the election.
You're talking, you offered to add another person to the school board. Listening to the answers from the previous two, I was thinking, we just make it a lifetime appointment, like a Supreme Court. Since you need extra time to be. John Lyman, I know you know what the questions are.
Yeah, I don't, moving the election to November would obviously have a lot of, there would be some positives there, because there'd be more folks that would be getting out to vote. One of the big negatives that was brought up in the article, that some proponents against, the measure was a lot of money is spent on November elections. And I don't know that we want to get into something where we're spending, excuse me, tens of thousands of dollars on the short side for a school board election. School boards, that's local governance. There is no greater method of local governance than a school board. And so adding in whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a libertarian or any of those other things, it's going to muddy the water. It's going to bring in a lot of those outside forces that don't care about what's going on in your local school district. They want to get somebody on a board somewhere to make decisions that are going to help them, not what's going to help out the community. So I would be hesitant to support a move to November. And Columbia's smart. Columbia's also a lot of really smart folks here that are engaged in the community. They know when our elections are, and people, show up. The 3 to 4 year term, I agree with what everyone has said. You learn a lot. It's a lot of drinking from your fire hose. That first year, having another year would be good. After 2-3 years of processes and policies and procedures and things, you really start to see some of those impacts. Having another year or two, I think, would be positive. And then, it's got to stay nonpartisan. I don't want it to be something where someone is fearful to come talk to me or ask me a question about something going on in their school because I've got a letter after my name.
Harper, Ferrao, you're going to be first on this one. I'd like for you to identify a problem that the school district is facing, and then what would be, in light of that problem, what would be the school board's role in addressing it?
Oh, wow. Pick something. What is a problem facing the district? Well, I think one of the things that a lot of us have been focused on and asking a lot of questions about lately is behavior impacts in our schools. Throughout the country, we're hearing about increased challenges in the classroom that both teachers are having, students are having in their learning environment because of what are termed, behavior, increased behaviors. We've been asking administration and looking at data to say, hey, whatever we're doing is not working. And so what do we need to be doing differently? Recently, for several months now, we've been looking at the bully policy. And as you can imagine, bullying is a behavior, and it impacts other students. And so we're looking at the bullying policy to improve it, to outline better supports for our students who might be experiencing these things, to hold people accountable and collect data and be able to address the situation and focus on areas where there might be a problem. In our last cultural survey, 16 of our schools, 20% or more of the students reported that they felt bullying was tolerated. That is their reality. Now, I don't know if that's what's happening because I don't have the data to back that up, and so we're looking towards that. We have a big focus that we need to place on this, and that's what I really want to help us do in the next 3 years.
Thank you. Keary Husain, same question. Identify a problem that the school district is facing, in your opinion, and then what do you think the school board's role would be in addressing it?
So, not to piggyback too much on what April just said, the first thing that I wrote down when you wrote the question was bullying, but I will mention just quickly, when I was when I first announced my candidacy, I have a lot of friends, you can imagine, born here 52 years ago and have friends that are still in the district with kids. Myriad of my friends reached out to me and said, you have to address the bullying problem in Columbia Public Schools. Like begging me, and like as if I could do something about it. But certainly it's part of the school board addressing policy and addressing and making it an out in the open thing. I think we do have a problem. Not to speak out of school, but I've had personal issues with members of my own family, my own children, being victims of bullying, and I've only lived back in this town for going on 3 years. So it's a very important thing that I think needs to be addressed. And I think the policies are in place. I'm not sure that they're being followed. But I will then switch gears really quickly to talk about special needs, IEPs, 504s. I think that we have policies in place to address these issues, but again, I've had my own children go through these evaluations, and I think they can be streamlined, and I think they can be better. I think some teachers are frustrated because they've tried to get their students into programs, and there's been some pushback. So I think it goes on both ways. So I think those two things I would really want to help address.
All right, thank you. John Lyman, same question. Identify a problem the school district is facing and then the board's role in addressing that problem.
So attendance has kind of been I was about to say pet project of mine, here for a while, but it's something that I've been, really mindful of and watching for a while. The district's goal is to have 90% of our students in seat 90% of the time. There's a variety of reasons for that. One of the big ones being we know that students who are in seat 90% of the time or more do significantly better on all of those standardized tests. On our upcoming board meeting on Monday, there's going to be a presentation with the CSIP that we're seeing double. If you're in seat 90% of the time or more, you score twice as well on those tests as if you don't. Now, it's not about getting those test scores, but it's about those kids are learning because they're in school. We've got to get back to that. We're seeing a lot of increases on our attendance numbers from our subgroups and for our students overall, but we've got to get better. We're not to that 90% yet. 83% sounds pretty good. That's a B minus. That was pretty good for me when I was in school. But 90%, even that's not that great. That's an A minus. We got to get them to that 95, that 98%. Our kids need to be in school, so we got to just continue to impress the importance of getting to school on time, staying there the whole time, not having that long lunch and things like that. I think if we can fix a lot of these attendance issues, a lot of the other stuff, I'm not saying it's panacea or anything, but it's a lot of the other stuff is going to correct itself if we can get our students in school 90% of the time or more.
All right, thank you. Paul Harper, same question to you. Identify a problem that the school district is facing and then the board's role in addressing that problem.
Well, apparently in this forum, there's going to be a lot of me too. So I'm gonna agree. I agree that we need to fix the attendance problem. I agree that we need to add additional behavior supports for students. But just because everybody else has talked about the other issues, I'm gonna talk about another issue facing the school, and that's our professional and hourly staff retention and recruitment problems. If we don't have well-qualified staff, children will never learn. Unfortunately, this is a problem nationwide. We need to make sure that as the fourth largest school district, we are competitive with everybody in the state, not just regionally. Because we're not actually in competition with some of our surrounding districts. We're in competition with some of the big districts in Kansas City, Springfield, and St. Louis. So we need to make sure that we have the right environment in place for them. It's not just about compensation and raw money. It's actually about the culture and about the working conditions. And we've done some work on that. We had a working conditions report that we're working on, that April's committee is certainly going to be working on that, some of those issues with the long-range planning. We need to make sure that we have the policies and procedures in place to help our educators educate. And that's part of what the policy committee has been doing, is making sure that those are clear, understandable, and that they're being followed. I think all of those things are very important. I think it's also important whenever it comes to teacher retention, and that's to build trust in the school system. But I can't talk about that because now I'm at
If you want 30 seconds extra, I can give you that.
All I'm going to say is that, we all know after COVID, people lost some faith in the school district. We need to do better about communication. We need to do better about explaining exactly what we're doing. We need to communicate with people where they communicate, not just in ways that we want to. And so I do think that's a part of the culture that attracts teachers.
I see an indication that John would like 30 more seconds.
Yeah,
for-
I'll just throw it out there. Well, all of us, and as I was writing down, I felt bad writing down all the problems that I see that are currently in the district. It's important to know that Columbia Public Schools is a high achieving school district. Top 15% in the state, which is looking at APR. This is a high achieving school district. Everybody has got issues and things. They're all the same across the board. As a board, we just need to continue to work as a group with the district administration to educate the community on what those issues are, how they can help group project fix these things.
30 seconds.
Thank you. One other thing that I just wanted to add that, I'm doing this as a grassroots thing, as sort of as a surrogate for my friends and family and other folks. One thing that was brought to my attention as well is the substance use education. Obviously, we're going to have substance use issues across the country, but education for our children. With legalization of marijuana, which I'm not against, as a physician, I've used medical marijuana many times for my patients, and it's worked wonders. But I think that I'm old enough, and some people in this room are old enough to remember Nancy Reagan and the DARE and the Just Say No. It was wonderful, beautiful, and it was great. It didn't work. Okay, the message was exact on key. It did not work. We need to figure out exactly what to do to educate our kids on these kind of issues. Thank you.
April Ferrao, you're the only one who hasn't taken extra 30. I don't only do that.
I'm good.
Okay. Next question, we're going to start with Keary Husain. How would you balance your personal obligations and your obligations as a school board member?
That's a great question. And having not been on the board yet, but attended the board meetings, I've attended Paul and April's policy meeting. I see how hard they work. When I first applied, handed in my packet, I was basically told to expect to spend almost like a full-time job. And the interesting thing is, and while most of us are, you can question the pathology of someone who goes into trauma surgery. I'm used to working 100-hour weeks. That is a norm. I now have time, because I'm not doing 100-hour weeks at a major academic shop, I have time to dedicate myself. Currently, I travel around Missouri, and I help level 3 trauma centers sort of beef up to become like level 2 and help take care of the regional areas. It's very rewarding, but I only do it part-time. The other part of the time I consult from home by reviewing catastrophic cases, injured patients, and I sit in front of my computer and I do that. So I actually have the time to dedicate making this a full-time, part-time, 3/4 FTE, whatever you want to call it, full FTE, and I'm committed to that. And that's a reason why when I knew I was moving back, when I left St. Louis and I was coming back to my home in Columbia, the first thing that came to my mind was, what am I going to do to help my community? And this is what makes the most sense.
So for Keary Husain, that was a future tense question. For the next 3, it's going to be, how do you balance your personal obligations and your obligations as a school board member? John.
Thank you. My kids, if they were watching, they'd probably all be listening and trying to figure that out. This is really a multi-hour-a-week unpaid internship. It's fantastic work, but it can take a tremendous amount of time doing it. Kids, we're sitting at the dinner table. I think my wife's a teacher, so the kids know we're talking about school stuff at dinner. I'm the current city board president. In my 8 hours at work today, I probably spent an additional 3 or 4 on the phone with either, Paul's the vice president, our board administrator, the superintendent. I had an hour-long meeting with him today on some different things. It's all the time, every day, all day. It'll be late at night, and it's going to pop up. My family kind of expects it to happen. They know it's going to happen, but it is one of those things that there are some barriers, there are some boundaries. Folks know that, hey, if it's 9, 10 o'clock at night, it's probably not the best. Unless it's Miss Ferrao, that's fine. But it is a balancing act. It is something that you do have to do. That there is a tremendous amount of time that you have to dedicate to this job to be proficient at it. It is hours and hours of reading. It is phone calls, it is text messages, it's emails, it's meeting with folks in the community. I'm fortunate at my job to be able to have that time to be able to do that. I'm thankful that everyone, that's sitting up here will also have us do that time.
Paul Harper, we come to you with the same question. How do you balance your personal obligations and your obligations as a school board member?
Well, I think if you ask my wife, the answer is that I don't. I pretty much have two speeds, on and off, and I love the work, but it does take a lot of time, and it does take a lot of phone calls. But I think we've been doing tremendous work. We just met, just yesterday, talking about what's going on in policy. John and I had a conversation today. April and I talked a lot of nights about that. And we do dedicate a lot of time that people, quite frankly, don't see to this endeavor. I would say that most of the school board members spend 20 extra hours or more a week dealing with things, dealing with the district, taking time off to go to school events, taking time off to go to meetings in the evening, to go to community events. I think all of that goes into being a good school board member and being active in the community. And thankfully, I also have a job that I get a lot of vacation time working for the state, so I'm able to do those things, and I am very happy to do it, and I hope that I'm elected again to continue doing it.
Thank you. April Ferrao, same question to you about balancing personal obligations and school board obligations.
So the boys laughed at me because I can't tell you how many of the board members would like for me to get a job. Because there really isn't any balance. It's an obsession. Maybe I need to be seen about that. I don't know. During our first election, I remember the first board meeting, I had already spent a lot of time at board meetings and reading board documents, but for that first meeting, I think it was 18 hours of reading all the things on the agenda to make sure I had all the information to vote. I do try, and I think it's probably pretty new in the last year that my husband does try to come home weekly because he's in Little Rock. And so I do try my hardest not to do board stuff on the weekends, but I just went to Florida where I kept texting everybody. So it's very hard to find. I personally can't find a balance, but that's because it's something I'm so passionate about and I love. If I find a good book, I'm going to read it for 8 hours. Well, I love this, so this is what I do. And my brain can't think about doing something else. So there is no balance.
You kind of, I think, maybe started to answer what I'm doing as a follow-up to all of you, and you cannot say, because you love children, that is not an acceptable answer to this. In 30 seconds, why put yourself through this? Because a lot of us say, that's insane. You're working another full-time job almost for free, and don't say, I love the Columbia Public School District. Is it ego? Is it just passion to want to work hard at something? How do you define this?
So that's a great question. So I'm not going to lie, ego might be part of it, but I also will sit there, and I said this to the teachers union last week, as a product, K through 12 of Columbia Public Schools, I am here because of my primary school education, period. I owe, and I've said it before, I owe Columbia Public Schools everything. I am a doctor, I am what I am today because of the incredible education that I received, and I want to continue that. I think that there have been some ups and downs. When I was a student, we talked about the Nancy Reagan years, her husband came and danced with the QP at Hickman when he was President of the United States, because we were that awesome. And I want to bring us back there.
So John Lyman, why do you do this?
I talked about running for the board for a long time, and finally at the kitchen table, my wife listened and just goes, well, would you just do it already? So it's a little bit that, but then it's also, one of the things that I really enjoyed about being a student at Rockridge and at the zoo was I enjoyed the reading, I enjoyed the research. I'm trying to not say I had a really good study skills teacher in middle school, but she's sitting right there. But I really enjoyed doing the work. It It's fun to be collaborative with the rest of the board, with the administration, with the community. It's just, it's exciting work.
Paul Harper, same question.
Well, public service is in my blood. I pretty much worked most of my life for not-for-profits, government entities, or the state government. I have to have activities where I feel like I'm doing good for the community or for the world, and there is nothing better in my mind than ensuring that the children in my community are educated. I can't imagine any other important position to be in, and I find that those dedicated public service jobs fulfill me.
Thank you. April Ferrao, you mentioned passion a little while ago. You might be expanding on that, maybe not, I don't know.
Civic responsibility, civic duty. I was just thinking as they were talking, even back in college, I was the philanthropy chair for our sorority. When my kids started, Ridgeway taught me that education is a collaborative effort between parents, teachers, and students. It takes all of us to make it work. And in today's world, so many parents are so busy. I felt like this is an area that I can step up. I can help out the schools, parents, and students and advocate for their needs, and I just love it.
Thank you. We're going to go to a question that has to do about money. And the first part of this question is written by the Board of Realtors, makes me feel kind of guilty. 2025 was the first year of the senior property tax-free effective revenue collection in Boone County. Since CPS is primarily funded with local taxes, how do you think the district should react to declining local revenue? And that's John Lyman first on this one.
We have a really, really good finance team at Columbia Public Schools. They have done a fantastic job over the last several years in making sure that we are responsible with the public money that we get. It's public money, it needs to stay public. That might be a question for later, but yeah. That team does a fantastic job and has been prepping since, I think pretty much since we got on board. The first year that I was on board, I was on the finance committee, so started hearing things about the fiscal cliff and things coming like that from the state. This being a more local sort of thing, we do have to watch what it is. We have a payroll, we have services that we're providing to our students. We have thousands of square feet of real estate, of property that we have to maintain. A lot of maintenance in those buildings has been deferred. We're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for the millions of dollars worth of that stuff that needs to happen to make sure our schools are those palaces that we want them to be for our students. So we pay attention to all of those things. Where the money's coming from, how often it's coming, when it's coming. We've got a budget for all of those things. So that declining local revenue is obviously something that we are taking a close eye on and figuring out where can we make cuts and keeping those cuts as far as possible from the classroom. We don't want to get anywhere near cuts that are going to impact things that happen in the classroom.
Paul Harper, same question to you. I'll just simplify this. Basically, Columbia Public Schools primarily funded with local taxes. How do you think the district should react to declining local revenue?
Well, we're going to have declining local revenue, we have declining federal revenue, and of course, we're going to have declining state revenue potentially. So we are going to have to take a look. I think that the Finance Committee has actually started some of that work. We need to figure out which contracts have to go away, which stay. Like John said, though, the most important part of that is you have to prioritize, and the things that directly touch students have to be the last thing to go. Staff, behavior supports, all of those things that are actually in the school that touch students' lives have to be the last thing to go. So what do? Most of our budget is actually payroll. So when we make cuts, we should not be making cuts at the lowest levels initially. Hopefully we'll never have to get that low. But it is a cliff that is out there, and it is something that we need to discuss, and we have started that process, to determine exactly what can and can't go, and what needs to be our priority. And of course, our priority number one has to be our students and the educational environment of our students.
Thank you. And for Ferrao, same question to you, dealing with the declining local revenue.
So 94% of our funding comes from state and local resources. So every time you hear talks about a lot of changes in Jeff City that they're thinking about passing with taxes or any kind of property tax freezes, things of that nature, that will impact our funding for public schools. And it's another ditto moment, but Dr. Klein and I were actually just talking last week about, we're having to look at any kind of cuts anywhere, and particularly when it comes to if there's any staffing cuts that are needed. The absolute last place that should be is anybody that's dealing with students directly in the classroom. The positions that directly impact the education of our kids, we cannot be messing around with those. If anything, I believe there's areas where we need more bodies to support those students, and so that might be a restructuring of how the staffing is. We do need to look at duplicate contracts. Do we have duplicate agreements with a variety of third parties where we're getting similar services or similar products? Can we streamline that? I know Finance Committee is looking at various options of things of where can we start looking for different funding that we can save money on.
Keary Husain, same question to you about dealing with the declining local revenue.
So this is a tough question, and I defer that I understand the Finance Committee is doing a great job, and I agree with that. Now, the issue is, so when the city of Columbia has tripled in size since I was born. And the district, the number of students has doubled in size since I was a student in the last half century. I think looking at the budget and really making some difficult decisions. I was asked in my little screening process with the CMNEA a couple weeks ago about what would I do about money. The last thing I want to do is, or would even advocate for, is decreasing funding, like these guys said, towards our teachers or anything to do with the schools. But I do think that we can, it's something as simple as let's get a forensic accountant come in and look really deep at the budget. This may not be a popular opinion, but we talked about putting your money where your mouth is. I lived in Clayton, which is a well-off area in St. Louis, which is also considered one of the top 2 or 3 school districts in the state of Missouri. And we want to be that here in Columbia. That's our mission. You paid to live in Clayton. You just did. And people who, you would live in a 1-bedroom apartment just so your kids could go to Clayton schools because of the cost of living and the taxes and everything else. So let's talk about the girl in the room. If you want a really great district with the funding to educate 20,000 students, you may have to look inward. And it may not be popular, but I think that we need to look at that.
I'll do a follow-up, and we'll start with John Lyman on this. Again, most of you, if not all of you, mentioned that in looking at cuts, you would not cut something that directly impacted the student. So what could possibly be cut, in your opinion, without touching that?
Golly. This past November, we went to the MSBA conference in Kansas City, and I attended a session, and I cannot remember all of a sudden which district it was, much smaller district in St. Louis, and what they did. And they actually sent a survey to the community and to all of their staff and said, rank every single thing that we spend money on in the district. What's the most important? What's the least important? The most important thing was salaries, et cetera, and benefits. Those bottom things, that district cut them right away. They were like, those individual little things, we don't need those anymore. So that's the first thing that I would do. I wouldn't pick it myself. I'd ask our faculty and our staff, what do you guys not need, not want, don't think is necessary? That's what we'll cut.
Paul Harper, same.
I was actually in the same conference and went to the same thing, and I agree. One of the things that we need to do, and quite frankly we need to get better at it, is ensuring that our community has input in these things. And that means that as we're doing the long-term planning, as we're doing potential cuts, we need to make sure that we're hearing from our community, what does our community think need to be cut? Because I think that this behavior support or this administrator maybe is somebody who should be cut. I may learn from somebody, no, do not cut that because that has far-reaching implications that you don't understand. And so I need to make sure that as we are doing this, as a part of the process, we're hearing from the community, we're hearing from our mainline teachers and ensuring that they have an input in the process so it's just not arbitrary from the board.
Hey, for Ferrao, in your initial answer to this question, you said something about looking at overlap on contract things, so that's a start to the answer. What else would you like?
Yeah, that's definitely a start. I mean, I've done a lot of fundraising for Columbia Public Schools, and I always talk about, the fighting the dime, and so, yeah, it's great if I can find $50 million to save someplace else, but if I can find $1 million here, and $1 million here, and $1 million here, I'm good with that too. And so I know we've already started looking at some travel expenses. Maybe we can have some savings there. I was not in the conference that the guys were in, but I like that district cut the lower things, and I would want to ask our parents and our students about those as well, which would be very informative. And we're going to be getting information from the strategic plan here in the next few months that's heavily community involved. That could drive some of those decisions.
Keary Husain, same question for you.
I agree with these folks. Looking at the people in the trenches are the people that know what is best. We can help by offering guidance and wisdom, experience, or playing around with the numbers. But when I was at WashU, not only am I a trauma surgeon, I'm a critical care doc. We built a 36-bed, one of the largest surgical ICUs in the country, state of the art. It was considered the standard. And the first thing we did was go to the ICU nurses and say, before we spend billions of dollars on this conglomeration, what do you guys need? What's wrong with what's happening now? What are we going to put in? Everything from the monitors, can you see the monitors when you walk in the room, to everything else. And I think that's an important way to go about things. 30 seconds isn't very long.
No, it's not. I appreciate you all. We're pretty lenient here. That's okay. You can finish your thought. There's so much agreement between everybody on this panel. I'm trying to come up with a question that might show some differences. So I'm tempted to ask, what's your favorite school in the district?
No comment.
I figured that I would not get anybody to answer that, so I probably won't be able to ask that. But that might come up with at least something you don't agree on. So let's start out with Paul Harper here. I'm a teacher in the district. Again, I'm throwing a lot of love to the Missourian today. Maybe I'll get a free subscription from this. So the article was talking about how insurance cost, I think it was 29.9%, let's just be realistic, that's 30% increase in my health insurance cost. I'm a teacher in the district. I look at that today and I say, it doesn't make me feel good. What would you tell me?
Well, that article I did see, and it is difficult as an employer. All employers are dealing with this, and that's that insurance costs are going up. I feel very strongly that we need to pay our employees insurance as we always have, and that's 100% per employee. Any time we ask our employees to pay extra, it's a cut of their salary. And as I said whenever I talked about the critical concern of the district, if we're cutting salary, we are cutting our competitiveness with other districts. That's not something that should be cut quickly. That's something that we need to continue to pay for because we need healthy teachers. We need their families to be healthy so that the teachers can come to work. So it is a critical issue, and we do need to work to ensure that is not one of the cuts we take in the long term.
Hey, Ferrao, I'm a teacher. I've seen that. I said, oh my goodness, what are they going to do? Throw that on me?
I actually got a text while I was sitting in the parking lot from an employee from that article, and I'm going to say something that might not be popular or well received, but I saw that first thing this morning, and it was the first I had heard of it, and I sat on the board. So this was news to me, so I'm still gathering more information from what I understand. The Finance Committee discussed these issues last night that, the health cost in this country is astronomical, and we're at a point where, something's got to give. The way the article read, I read it as it applies to all the premiums. My understanding is that the district intends to still cover the employee's cost if the 29% applies to dependent coverage. Again, I wasn't in the meeting, but that is my current understanding. But I have very limited knowledge at this point, but it is imperative, Paul makes a great point, is that if we're gonna raise your premium $200 a month, we just cut your salary by $2,400 a year, and for some people, that is a significant amount of money. So it's definitely something that the board needs to learn more about for those of us who don't sit on the finance committee.
This ought to be good. Keary Husain, you're from the medical community.
90 seconds is not going to be I've been dealing with this from the day I decided to go to medical school, which was when I was 5 years old. So, anyway, no, all kidding aside, seriousness, universal health care has been something that I have been trying to push my entire adult life. That's not happening now. I will tell you, the first thing I will say to these teachers is I feel you. When I left academia, I have been on the exchange myself with my kids. And we knew this was coming. We heard it. It was screamed from the rooftops. We knew that January 1st was going to change things, and we all, or at least some of us, put our heads in the sand. My premium went up $400 a month, and my deductible is unaffordable. I went to pick up a diabetic medication last week, and they asked me for $900. It is a problem, and I am passionate about that. Now, what does that have to do with our teachers? I promise you that retention and benefits is what we need to do. I will also tell you that there is an election, not for school board, but for other things, this coming November.
John Lyman, same question.
So, my wife's a teacher. Like I said, my wife's a teacher in the district. She has been for 20 years, and I think it was a decade ago or so where we took the kids off of her insurance and put them on mine because it flipped. To the point where it's cheaper for them to be on my insurance at my job than it was for her to be on the That's not a dog on the district. It's just that's the name of the game. You figure out where the cost is. It's unfortunate that it's healthcare that we're talking about here. We were talking beforehand. Some of us, all of our kids, us, have been sick. It's not something that is fun, and so having to have that cost in the back of your mind is concerning. I echo April's concern about just learning about this. I saw the article this morning and went, oh. I am thankful, though, that our finance committee did table things until next month to learn more. It wasn't something where they were like, oh, hey, here's the information right now. You have to make a decision right now. We're not leaving the team to make a decision. It's, no, hold on. We're going to get more info. We're going to ask more questions. We're going to make sure that this is something, that we can do before making that decision. Changing the district from having 100% coverage for our employees, that's a non-negotiable to me. We have to, it's a benefit to working in the district. We cannot take that away. We know, I was talking earlier about attendance for our students. Same goes for teachers. Our substitutes are fantastic. A lot of them are former teachers, retired teachers, but our classroom teachers, those subject matter experts, we need them in our buildings. We need to make sure that they have the care and the support that they need. So we need to continue doing that.
Would anyone here want to have 30 seconds to add to anything that you've said? And I think I started that question with you, Paul.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty similar.
We'll move on to another question then. The district recently sued the state of Missouri over what it calls the unconstitutional provision in Senate Bill 727 to allow charter schools to operate in Boone County. I want to phrase the question this way, and it goes to April Ferrao first. So you get called in front of a legislative committee in Jefferson City about charter schools. What do you say? Just, it's a, theoretical situation, what would you like to tell them?
I love this question.
Of course you do. Of course you do, especially because it's to me first. It's an excellent question. It was one I was expecting and contemplating all day because I never want to get into trouble and speak out of turn. And since we're under current litigation, it makes you go, what can I say? But what I'll say is I think public education is incredibly important and vital. It is the most important thing in this country, public education. And public education is available to all students regardless of who they are, where they come from, what their challenges are, or what opportunities they have available to them. And it gives everyone the same opportunity to achieve and succeed and to become the next great leaders of our country. We do not have a society that can be sustained if we don't have a well-educated society, and that starts with public education. And it's just vital that we have a public education system. I will admit that my child needed to go online for half days when he was in middle school, but that was our choice. We were able to do that and afford it, and it worked for us. That's a choice we made, and it was a good choice for us. But public education is vital, and I think that taxpayers put their money behind public education. That's where they want their money to go.
I tried to word this so that you didn't have to say yes or no on whether you support the lawsuit.
Right.
But again, I think you're smart enough to know that that's still what the question is asking. Keary Husain, same question to you. Your call, you get to go down to Jefferson City, you've got a committee there, a hypothetical situation, and they say, so what do you think about charter schools?
Well, I am currently sitting here as just a citizen and a parent, and so I don't have a muffler on. I 100% support public schools. Public schools are the backbone of this country, backbone of this community. I'll sing it from the rooftops so you guys are sick of it. I'm a proud product of this public school education, and it put me, the moon was my destination. I am in favor of the lawsuit. I think that the way that things are designed, what is trying to happen in Boone County I'm against it. I think that the tax dollars need to go to public schools. But here's the caveat. There are parents in this district who are frustrated. And there are parents who are begging for this kind of thing to come into town. And why? Instead of turning our back and saying it's wrong, we don't agree with it, we need to talk to them and ask them why. Why are you frustrated with Columbia Public Schools? Why would you rather have vouchers? Why would you rather have a charter school come in and give you different options? What can we do that will make you happy? Because that's where I think that we are not addressing the issue. The other thing is, I just do have to say, because it's been brought up on my website, you will see I am very proud. My brother is a director of what they call a charter school for at-risk youth in St. Paul, Minnesota. That school is not what we're talking about here. It is a public school. It just happens to be a safety net type of school that they deemed a charter school back in the 90s. So I can't change what they call their school, so please, there's been a question of, well, how can you possibly be, because your brother. I'm very proud of my brother and what they do. They help kids who are really in need. And I'm sorry I'm going over, but I just need to clarify that. And I'm happy to answer any other questions. I've asked him if he wants to change the name of his school from charter, and he's like, no. It's more of a magnet school. It's more of a public school that helps out. But anyway, I just want to clarify.
John Lyman, what would you say?
Man, I knew the question was coming. I was trying to figure out how I was going to frame it. It wasn't going to be. So I'm trying to not let the dog out of the cage here. I'm a Columbia Public Schools graduate. My wife is a Columbia Public Schools teacher. We have 3 kids in Columbia Public Schools. Columbia is a public school town. People come to Columbia because they want to go to the University of Missouri, they want to go to Stevens, they want to go to Columbia College. They stay in Columbia because of the jobs that are available here. They start and raise families in Columbia because Columbia Public Schools is a high-achieving school district that has all of the opportunity and all of the choice that a family could want. I don't know why anyone would want to go anywhere else other than Columbia Public Schools. Yes, like we were talking about earlier, there are issues, there are problems that we are working through. We're working with our community on identifying those problems and the best ways to solve them. You know, this is my home. I mean, I've been here for 40 years. I can't imagine living anywhere else. Columbia Public Schools, I will always be a supporter of the school district, of the public school system in Columbia, in Boone County, across the state, across the country. It's foundational to who we are. You know, CPS for life.
Thank you, sir. Paul Harper, same question.
Well, in Missouri, around the state, our traditional public schools are part of our communities. Friday night lights, all of those things. The way that the charter school statute is written, most legislatures don't actually want charter schools in their area because it would break that. But they targeted Boone County. I can't talk about the lawsuit, so let me tell you about some of the reasons why I think that our current scheme for charter schools doesn't help us. First, they're not local. There is no requirement for charter schools to be local at all, so it can be run by out of town interests. Everybody talks about local control. Charters don't have local control. Everyone talks about transparencies, but this not-for-profit corporation doesn't have to be transparent to the community. Doesn't have to ask the taxpayers, as we do, hey, help us out because we're having a budget shortfall. They just get it. They are not beholden to the community at all. Whereas our traditional public schools, as they are in Missouri, are beholden to the community. I have to respond to all of you because you're my constituents. Nobody at a charter school has to do that. So they are very different in Missouri. That being said, there are charter school models. That's not the case. There are charter school models that are predominantly hosted by the local public school. That's different. That's not what we're facing here. Our charter schools are not beholden to us, are not beholden to the taxpayers that pay them, and are not good for our community.
Thank you. This question, I'll start with Keary Husain. I'm going to place you back in Jefferson City, talking to legislators there. But first I need to ask the panel, because I really don't know the answer to this. It seems to me like school choice is equal to open enrollment. Is that true or false? This isn't a question for the panel to mull over. It just seems to me like the way open enrollment has been described might mean school choice. Is that true or false? Anybody?
Right now, it's mostly voluntary by the school district. We even have a limited school choice in that we allow our school teachers to bring their children into the district, but we don't. It's whether a district accepts people from out of the district is a district level decision, and quite frankly, as it should be. We should have local control of our locals.
But when it's being discussed at times in Jefferson City now, it says throw away boundaries, period.
Yeah.
That would be school choice.
In theory, the devil's always in the details, and that has been thrown around in some of the bills.
Keary Husain, an answer on what you would say to those who are advocates of that kind of a school situation in Missouri, where you have the choice. I can send my child wherever that I would meet the quota in the school district that was set, saying we can accept X number of students. I would say, all right, I want my child to go to that school. I'm willing to get them there.
Within the district? And are we still talking about,
Anywhere.
so we're talking about vouchers, or we're talking about just your tax dollars?
Well, I can send them to the public school in Jefferson City. I might just say, you know what, I drive down to Jefferson City and work there, so I'm gonna take my kids with me, and that way I can get them there to school, I can bring them home when the day's over, and if Jefferson City allows that and says, we got that room, I can choose that, and so be it.
And I'm first. Okay, so, I believe that, here's my short answer to that, and this may be not politically savvy, and this may be a little bit ignorant, but as someone who grew up here, my parents, my dad came here, as a physician in 1968, met my mother. My mom had already graduated from public schools here. They stayed and they wanted to raise their family in Columbia. And I'm now back here with my kids in the district. I think if you live in the district, you pay taxes in the district, you should go to school in that district. And I just think that that's the way that things have always kind of been. Again, I think if you're frustrated, I think if you have an issue, you bring it to the board, you bring it to the administration, and we try to fix it. But I guess what's the slippery slope here? You live in Columbia. I grew up, I had my kids in Clayton schools. Clayton schools were great, loved Clayton schools. Are you saying that, okay, I'm gonna send my kids to St. Louis every day when I live in Columbia? And I just don't, I don't know where that ends. I don't know where that cliff drops off. And I just strongly feel that if there's an issue with how we're educating our kids in Columbia, we should fix that in Columbia, and the kids should go to school in Columbia. That's my humble opinion.
And the rest of you don't feel like you need to take 90 seconds. It's really kind of a bad question anyway. But John, Lyman, your thoughts on that?
I mean, you ask it like I haven't talked to advocates for, school choice and things like that in Columbia. Columbia Public Schools is a neighborhood school district. You go to the school that is in your neighborhood. That does a variety of things. It builds a culture, it builds a community. Go to any one of our schools, like I say, elementary schools, because those are a little bit different. Those principals are just, man, they get up about what they got going on. But go to any of our schools and you're going to feel that culture, that community that's there. That's built by the kids that live around that school. Go to any playground at any of our elementary schools. The kids that are playing on the playground probably were there, for recess the day before. We're a neighborhood school district, and so removing those lines and saying anybody can go anywhere. Well, now it's just going to get weird. You're going to lose Friday night football. If people are able to go, wherever they want. If you're going to a school, and we want to make sure in the district that your child or your student's educational experience, is not impacted by the zip code that you live in, or the neighborhood that you live in. It should be the same everywhere. They should all be afforded the same opportunities. If you feel like your student's not getting that, get involved. Every one of us did kind of the ultimate thing when it comes to getting involved with the school district, and we're running for school board. But be a member of the PTA. Be a member of, other committees or groups that are out there that are going to try to help those students out. If you see something going on in that school that's not right or not good, go get involved. Sit and talk about it, or saying, hey, let's create a whole other thing, or let's just get rid of all the lines and we'll just figure it out. That does not solve the problem that you're trying to solve.
Paul Harper, same question.
Well, I said it earlier, our school districts are the heart of our community. On a Friday night in the fall, we can go out and see football, we can see all our friends, we can see everybody who lives in our neighborhood. We're all there. We go to the plays, we go to the musicals, we go to see baseball. That's what our community is. When it starts getting fractured, our communities get even more fractured. And we always people talk about that white picket fence that everybody talks about. You can't have community if everybody's going every which way and there is no more heart of the community. So I'm a big believer in the community schools, and that's really the heart of our community.
For Ferrao, same question to you.
Can you repeat the question?
Probably not. Talking about open enrollment or school choice and how you would speak to those in Jefferson City that are advocates for that, saying, we shouldn't have any restriction. If a school district says, I can accept X number of kids from wherever they want to come in the state, there's no problem with me saying, bring them on.
I actually also just saw briefly, I'm not sure if I read the entire article, but I just saw briefly, last year a lot of the open enrollment had to do with, if I live in Hallsville and would like my kid to go to Columbia Public Schools, or I live in Columbia Public Schools and I want to go to Hallsville, that kind of thing. The recent article that I just read that I think they were discussing was also related to the inner district. So I'm at Shepherd and I want to go to Paxton, right? And the first thing I would say is you're not thinking about the practical application or the consequences of what you're wanting to implement. Because, while neighborhood school and community and all of those things are important, we also need to have the infrastructure of a building. We have to be able to handle the number of students there. We need to be able to plan staffing appropriately. And if kids and families can just pick and choose every year, we can't really plan for any consistent staffing, consistent education, consistent materials, or anything like that. I would be asking the people in Jefferson City, have you thought about the changes that you're making and what the practical implication will be for the districts that this is going to be impacting? That would be my first thing I would be asking.
So what I'm hearing you all saying is that you would like to say to the NCAA, no Wild West in transfers.
Yes.
You should
I
speak to them.
almost brought up like NIL.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking that. We have exhausted our time for questions and answers, not for closing statements. We'll start with Keary Husain for a final 60-second wrap-up for you tonight.
I just first want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you for the rest of the panel. I chose to do this because I love Columbia. I'm back in my hometown after a hiatus. I have 3 kids in the district, and I really feel strongly that I can help every kid in this district, including my kids. I feel I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I feel education is under attack in this country. I think that we need to protect our children from what's happening at the highest levels. We need to teach history the way it happened. We need to respect the scientific method. We need to let our children read the books that have been written. And we need to fund the arts. And I think as a member of this community, I want to be a part of a board that has that mission in mind. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. April Ferrao, next.
Again, thanks for hosting this forum. I always enjoy this forum. I come every year. I'm running, really, as I said, I can't imagine doing anything else, but I have spent nearly 20 years focused on advocacy for our students and our families and our staff. And it takes a tremendous amount of work to do this job and to make well-informed, educated decisions every time you have to make a vote. And you have to have that commitment in order to do that and have the time to do it. It's just something I absolutely love, and I've got some projects, I gotta create a 10-year master plan and I gotta get through another 100 policies. So I'm really hoping that you all will vote April in April. And let me stay another 3 years.
Thank you. Paul Harper, your final comment.
When I ran, I promised to help improve the district, and I think that I'm partially running on the record that we've made. Since I got on, we have increased teacher salaries significantly, and hopefully we'll continue that. We have improved compensation for summer school and extra duty days. Our APR has gone from 70 to 88.7. We've ensured that the bills are now transparent and on the agenda. We've hired the district's first full-time general counsel to provide legal guidance on the ground. We have reviewed and updated over 200 district policies. As you know, April and I are very proud of that. We appointed a special education task force to get parent input in how that program is operating. We've implemented broadcasting and recording of all board committees and board meetings. And so I'm very proud of the work we've done, and I'm asking for everybody's vote in order to continue that good work. And I'll just end it with my website is paulharper4cps.com.
Thank you. John Lyman, final comment.
Columbia is my home. Like I said earlier, I can't imagine living anywhere else. I love everything about the city, the diversity, the restaurants, the parks, the shopping, the music. All of the things. I love the passion that this community brings. Over there, 40 people the other night at the city council meeting giving public comment about something. I mean, this is what Columbia is folks coming out and saying, here's what's going right, here's what's going wrong, and then those folks listening to those things. As on the board, we've done nothing but be transparent. That was one of the big things that I ran on 3 years ago, and I'm going to continue that. We were ugly transparent with redistricting. We added meetings, because we thought we needed more. We kept hearing things from the community about additional thoughts and concerns that they had, and we were redrawing the lines for the new elementary school. When we had to, we were on the board 45 days and had to replace a person that stepped down. We had an unbelievably transparent process for that to make sure that the community knew what was going on. It's been my honor, to serve the last year as president and the year before that as vice president. Can't imagine doing anything else. If anybody has questions, my cell phone number is online. Call me. Coffee, beer, whatever you want to do. Let's sit down and let's chat.
Keary Husain, April Ferrao, Paul Harper, John Lyman, they're on the ballot in the municipal election that comes in April. Some might vote early, so I hesitate to say what that date is, but just vote. You'll have an opportunity to vote for up to 3 of the 4 candidates here. Thank you for being here. We'll take 10 minutes off, and then we'll come back with the council portion of the Mark Farnan Board of Realtors Forum tonight.
Hi.